Welcome to the Jets UK podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andres Groves, and I'm joined by one of my co-hosts, Matthew Merrett. Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm all good. It's my birthday week, so something to look forward to after a disappointing weekend. As I've mentioned before, I'm a Chelsea fan. We had a loss this weekend. Jets also losing, so it's a bit of a tough sporting weekend. But we're into December. Christmas is coming, so plenty to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the game had enough positives. It was a lot better of a loss than what we suffered in the previous weeks. Even though one side of the ball didn't show up like in previous weeks, at least one side of the ball did, and that was exciting to see the offense really look good in the first half, even if special teams is also being an issue, and we'll get to that as well. But especially in the defense, though, was just impossible to deal with, and I think that played out in the second half, right?
Yeah, it was one of those losses, particularly for the first kind of portion of the game before they kind of started ramming time of possession down our throats, where it was one of the games we would have kind of taken back in pre-season, where you've got Zach looking sharp, looking good in the offense, kind of delivering the ball, and all of those things which we've spoken about over the Mike White, Joe Flacco weeks were paid off and were put into practice. We saw it on the pitch. And the defense just didn't show up, particularly in the first half, where it was 3 drives and just they could not get near Philadelphia. And then Philadelphia started running the ball a bit more just to kind of control the clock. And again, it was just painful watching just the inability to stop them. And we'll break down both the offense and defense over this podcast. But there just needs to be at some point some complementary football played by the New York Jets. And you can't have one side playing well like we had in the first 4 weeks, where it's the defense, and that's kind of pivoted back, where the offense is showing up to be slightly respectable, and the defense just can't get out of their own way. And it's a talent thing, it's a scheme thing, and eventually these weeks they should hopefully pay off for the Jets. We will see 60 minutes of one football team, but until that happens, it's just a bit messy. But I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's the kind of game we would have taken in pre-season. Zach looking good, Elijah Moore looking like a stud, Elijah Vera Tucker paving ways in the run game. So it's lots of positives to take out of it. Yeah,
there is a lot of positives to still take from this, and none more than Zach. We obviously had he had a rough return last week against the Texans, obviously, and we got the win, but that's because how bad the Texans are, and. But the team didn't play overall. He didn't play well. The team played okay, and we got the win. But there was questions about him coming into this week, and to see him take that step up and really, play within the system. Like, we had that great game against Tennessee, but most of the big plays were obviously ones that were very Zach Wilson BYU-esque, and worked out again in that game. But to see him work within the offense that we had seen with his other the other QBs in the room that have played when he was out, to see him kind of implementing some of what they had done well and kind of bring it to his own game was really really encouraging, right?
Yeah, I think sticking within the offense, sticking within the timing, within the scheme. Zach Wilson so far has appeared to be at his best when he doesn't have to think too much, when he can play instinctively, play in the timing within the rhythm, and deliver those sharp balls. And I think that was so impressive. And I think one thing that makes it a really nice takeaway is you're going up against a Philadelphia team who have an incredibly talented interior defensive line. And one of Zach's tendencies so far this season has to be getting a bit happy feet in the pocket when there's interior pressure. And as such, he's kind of sailed a couple of those passes that we've seen have kind of just been floated. And I thought his footwork in particular looked a lot better in terms of getting his feet centered, his body in the right position, and kind of you can see the improvement in his accuracy as a result of that, and I think that was really nice to see. I think the way that he managed the offense, in terms of, as you said, it's a nice juxtaposition to the Tennessee game, which you can compare the two. But Tennessee, he was obviously kind of a bit more of that down the field attacking. Yesterday, he was kind of in the system, those 10 to 20 yards intermediate areas. He was so accurate, so crisp with the ball. And I think it's a real positive step forward against a decent defense. People like Darius Slay on that secondary are those chumps. I think we can't not mention the interception in terms of being balanced, and it was another one of those frustrating throws by Zach. However, I'm not going to get on him too much because of it. First of all, in his post-game presser, he said that the ball slipped in his hand. I haven't watched it back, I haven't seen that, but if it did happen, these are things that can happen. And the second thing is, you've got to remember at this point of the game, the Jets were slipping out of contention.
Yeah.
And the defence has kind of been stuffed by these long, suffocating Philadelphia drives. And as a result, Zach had been sat on the sideline for a long time. I think they scored to make it 18-14 at halfway through the second quarter, and then Philadelphia go on a long drive.
Yeah.
Then it's half time, then Philadelphia start with the ball and do another 9-minute drive, and then the Jets have a 3-and-out where Tevin Coleman drops what would be a first down. And then Zach's back on the sideline for another long Philadelphia drive. So you kind of can feel the game slipping away from him. And as a rookie, you can kind of overthink. And then you get into this 3rd and 10 situation where the previous pass, the one to Elijah Moore, was just slightly wide. And Elijah Moore got both hands to it, but just couldn't reel it in, unfortunately. So you kind of feel like it can mount up on you. And I think in that pass, Zach just tried to do a little bit too much and force it into a window. But
I knew it was coming.
It was one of those ones.
I knew it was
where,
coming on the 3rd and 10. I knew the interception was coming because he was going to push. Yeah. He's going to push. He's been out for so long. Like I said, the defense completely froze the offense in terms of how far they're out of the game for such a long time. Even before that 3-and-out, they were out for such a long time. When you think of the end of the second half time, beginning of the third quarter. They come on, 3rd-and-out, comes back in, they score again. The defence yet again can't stop anybody. He comes on, he's pressing, and that happens with a young QB. It was expected, and I felt it was coming, and it didn't surprise me at all. Even if it didn't slip out of his hand, and he just sailed the pass. It looked like his feet weren't in great position either. I think his feet work. I mean, David mentioned it on Twitter as well, like that. His feet. And you look at the video, his feet aren't perfect, right? It's fair enough, but. Everything overall is he's just pressing for those points because he knows the game's slipping away from him, and this goes down to the team having to work around, not allow him to try and play the hero, and they have to kind of make sure that they are playing to a level where he can just play within the game and they can lift him up so he doesn't have to do those things, and that's not happening when the defense plays so badly.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly it on Zach, and I think as a result I'm not going to get too worried about that interception. I thought it was a good game, and someone else who had a good game again was Matt LaFleur up in the booth, and I thought this was one of the best games that he called for Zach in terms of giving him those easy completions to start with, which we didn't see at the start of the year, kind of building him into the game, those simple usage, good trick plays, kind of keeping things varied. Tevin Coleman ran the ball well, but what the Jets are missing at the moment is just pieces on offense and defense, but it's becoming glaringly obvious that when Elijah Moore gets taken away, they kind of need another wide receiver in that room to kind of add a wrinkle, add something different, gives you different looks. And then you also just need to find tight end help, I think.
So important. I mean,
Griffin obviously scored the touchdown, but apart from that, when you watch his route running, his kind of general commitment to it just feels lethargic and slow, and he's not a comfort blanket for Zach like he should be. And you kind of compare some of the plays against Dallas Goedert was making, and just the way that Philadelphia were able to use him in the screen game down the field, making mismatches against Javelin Guidry. It's so obvious that the Jets need to invest in tight end and wide receiver in this coming off season, alongside all of the defensive side of things. So work to be done, but I thought LaFleur had a good game, and I think that it bodes well moving forward.
It does. I mean, it's really encouraging that that he's having he's improved immensely since going up in the booth, and you can tell it makes a difference because obviously him being able to see the game from the angle that he has compared to being on the sidelines, it's just for someone with his inexperience as being a play caller, it just gives him, it's kind of like a bit of a handicap being on the sideline, and he did it for Zach to make him comfortable. Now they've got that sorted out with who's on the sideline with Zach. And him being up there, I think it's perfect going forward. And you see there's just night and day difference in the offense generally, with him up there and with him kind of compared to where he was on the sideline. So, that's really encouraging going forward that if Mike LaFleur continues how he is and paired with Zach and that offense becomes, installed and Zach gets more comfortable in it, then LaFleur can continue to add things to it, and it could become even more dynamic. You add more players to it, it becomes even more dynamic, and we could have something really, really good to see in the years coming. So I think offensively, the running game was pretty good. There was nothing too sparkling, but I think it was efficient. I saw AVT was doing AVT things, but the line was creating some nice holes as well. So, what were your thoughts of the running game for the offense?
I think the running game kind of did as expected against a stout Philadelphia defensive line. I think Tevin Coleman has kind of impressed a lot of people over the last couple of weeks. I think he looks like he has a bit more juice left in the tank than perhaps people gave him credit for. Would have liked to see Ty Johnson perhaps get a couple more touches in the running game. He was a bit quiet. And the offensive line are gelling and getting better week on week. And I think they are kind of figuring out the system, learning the system, which is a credit. And I think it's noticeable that a lot of the chat about drafting an offensive lineman has kind of simmered down a little bit. And I think that's a testament to how well they've been playing. I think they're kind of setting their blocks, getting push and in this kind of wide gap system and kind of doing what's asked of them. There's still like the occasional play where you're just like, you wish you could have that one back, but that's natural when you're playing offensive line in the NFL. It's a hard position to play.
Yeah.
And the guys are kind of executing it within the system well. So at the moment, I think you just kind of want to see more. Big question mark, of course, at the moment is LDT.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's been an injury update, but I think every Jets fan will agree with me that we don't want to see Greg Van Roten back in that starting lineup. So keep everything crossed, I guess, to get LDT back next week.
Yeah, hopefully it wasn't too bad. I know it's one of those ones we have to see how the severity of it. I believe it was the ankle injury, right?
Yeah.
And so we have to see the severity of the injury and where it was in the ankle and how high the grade was. So we'll keep an eye on that as the week goes on, and fingers crossed he can get back in there. So yeah, because I think we've had our fill of GVR for the year, so to have a bit more extra, it would be not very pleasant. Yeah, I mean, we can't really go away from the offense just yet without mentioning Elijah Moore and giving a little bit of pop. I mean, obviously there's a few that maybe he will probably beat himself up about where he could have maybe had it, but I think Darius Slay on a couple of those plays had a really he was just being a good player. He's a really good defensive back, a very good cornerback, and made good plays to prevent more from getting there. But overall he had a pretty good game as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he's kind of looking more and more the part in this offense. I think the one that he really would be one back is that one before the interception. It kind of looked like he slipped a bit and it just got away from him, and that's kind of one that you want back. But the timing was there with Zach. It's kind of the crisp, and what you watch Elijah is so smooth at is at the top of his breaks. And this is where he really comes into his own on the field. Is he's got that speed and that burn, but when he can do this pivot on a penny and kind of turn, change direction, break, and kind of create 2, 3, 4 yards of separation, that is where he's elite. He was super unlucky as well not to get a pass interference down the field. And we're not going to harp on about the referees too much.
But here we are. We're gonna just segment a small section. Yeah, just to say we deserve to lose this game. But those refs were shit. They were just, it was poor. I mean, they had a few bad decisions for the Eagles as well, in terms of just being terrible across the board. But it definitely slanted in against us. Like, was it 4 or 5 decisions that were just terrible? So, yeah, we have plenty to kind of look back at what we did, but the referees had a shocker as well.
Yeah. But we're not going to talk about that.
No, that's it.
The positives for the Jets.
There we are.
Offense.
We move on now.
I think Elijah's now under. I think he's about 390 yards away from 1,000 yards from scrimmage in his rookie season. 5 games left. Very, very achievable. I think if he keeps going and he's kind of chugging along at 60, 70 receiving yards a game and adding another 20, 30 on the ground. So I think it'd be awesome if he can hit that 1,000 yards from scrimmage in his rookie season. We'd all love to see that.
Yeah.
His touchdown was well taken. Kind of keeps showing up, doesn't stop, and I think he's a real asset going forward. So more from Elijah Moore we want to see, and I think as I mentioned at the top, you want to see the Jets add a different kind of weapon opposite him. I think Corey Davis is nice, but if you can just add another body to that wide receiver room who's going to kind of keep giving you everything, and you could get Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, and someone question mark who on the field, you're going to have a really nice trio.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there was an opportunity there for Denzel Mims to. I don't know if he if he was able to take the chances. I don't know how many snaps. I didn't calculate how many snaps there were. I know he was on the field a bit, but yeah, I don't know what's happening with Denzel. I just don't think it's going to work out. It's working out right now. And but he could play that kind of that end of the wide receiver core, and that would be very intriguing person to add to the end of the wide receiver core. If you've got Elijah, you've got Corey Davis, you've got maybe a high round draft picks, to add to that talent. And I think we've got a pretty good wide receiver core already. I think if we improve on it, it could be even better. And so overall, I think the offense is moving in a really good direction, but it just needs a bit of help from the defense because, and we'll get to them now, they completely froze out the offense and just turned off the light, turned them into an absolute ice block, and that was it. They were not going to unfreeze, and they didn't score another point after that because the defense was just atrocious. Right, this game was just from the outset. They just couldn't do anything. It was they couldn't get it down on third down. I was pleading with them just one one stop, and every time they did it, there would be a flag. And then one time they did do it, the Eagles said, "You know what? We're going to go on it on fourth down because you stopped us once on a pivotal play. You can't stop us twice on a pivotal play," and they got it as well. So it was just an absolute shocker from the beginning to the end, right?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And what it's like at the moment is you're hosting a dinner party and you've got the recipe to an incredible meal, like one of the best meals. And when it's executed well, this meal, it is delicious to die for. People come from all around the world to eat this meal. But at the moment, you don't have the ingredients for this meal. You can't pull together this meal. And the Jets at the moment are somehow battling on with cheap ingredients. They can't get steak, so they're using turkey sausages, and they're still trying to replicate the same meal, as opposed to adapting and adjusting and kind of thinking what can be the different meal. And what I'm talking about here is the scheme that the Jets want to run is one of the best schemes to do when you have the talent to do it. And we saw that in San Francisco's Super Bowl season. You just have to look at the talent on the D-line, the linebackers, the cornerbacks, the safeties. You had top-tier talent at every level of that defense. And they could execute that defense. And because you get the four-man rush, can get after the quarterback, and they're so quick there. But then you have people like Fred Warner at the linebacker positions who are so quick in terms of coverage. You had one of the best zone cornerbacks in the league in Richard Sherman. You had the pieces that you needed. And the Jets at the moment do not have that. There is a severe lack of talent on this side of the ball, which is causing them. And it's been compounded by, and I've harped on about this for multiple weeks, but the scheme that the Jets want to play on defense, getting four people into the backfield, but without the people like Bryce Huff to kind of contain, you're just creating holes in the running game that are so easy to get through. And in some of the situational football, the 3rd and 19 where you play cover one is just bemusing, considering the Jets so often play zones or cover three. To go to that call then is just insane. So there is, I guess I'm trying to present the positives here. And if you look at San Francisco's defense while Salah was there, it wasn't great for a while until he got the right pieces in place. And that is what we're all hoping for.
Yeah. But
the worry is just the lack of adjustment, correction, ability to think on our feet, show different looks, is kind of really repetitive. They missed, and we've missed him every time he's not been on the field this season. But Bryce Huff not being out there is a huge loss for this defense, and it is slightly worrying that an undrafted free agent can have that much impact on defense.
I think though we need to kind of get past that label on him now. I mean, he's proven that he's a good NFL player at this point. I think yeah, he is not a star player, but in our position, I think he's a decent NFL player. You would obviously want to upgrade if you're going to be if you want to be a good NFL team. But I think he's one of those people who's kind of broken through as a good player, even if he's come from undrafted free agent stock. I think he's moved into a kind of, he's a decent player overall. But yeah, we're definitely missing him. And yeah, I mean, the only concern I have overall, and I've been thinking about, I was very much of the nature a few weeks ago where, this defense is going to be good once we get the players in. It's proven that it works once you get the players in. The only thing that I've been thinking about in the last few weeks is actually that how often don't you have your top players in the NFL through different reasons? And at the moment it could be a COVID outage, it could be injury, it could be for a couple of weeks, it could be for the whole season. Very often you're going to be without certain players in that system, and you can't just say, "Oh, it works when everything is there." And that's what happened with San Fran in 2019. Everything was there. Nick Bosa came in, was the absolute last piece of the puzzle, and everything was beautiful. And then when he went out against us actually last year, the defense they had to change things around, and Salah actually did move things around and change the defense a bit and actually pivot a little bit to make up for that. And they ended up being mediocre, okay. That's what we need. We need some changes here, because running the ideal offense right now when you haven't got the players to do it is not gonna. That's very rare that you're gonna go into an NFL season with all your pieces, on a week-to-week basis. So I think we have to see more of them making do without certain people at certain times. And this is the season to do it. When you're in your first season, you've already lost Carl Lawson. This was the year to kind of mix things up and try different things and try to kind of, see what works, what doesn't when you haven't got certain positions, because that's good things to have down the line when you're missing a player for a week here, a week there. You never know what could happen. So I just feel like we can't constantly say it works when everyone's there, because very rarely are you going to have everyone there for all 17 games in any season, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
You need to be able to adjust and adapt in the NFL, and so far we haven't seen that. One item I really wanted to call out this week, because I think it was super noticeable yesterday, was the third down defense, and Ulbrich just doesn't seem to like doing disguised coverages on third down. He sometimes wrinkles them in on first and second down, but the defense, how they set up on third down is how they defend that play. So you could have depth zones, man, whatever it is, but they don't disguise at all on third down, and it is kind of to the point where teams are starting to take advantage of it. And it's one of the reasons the Jets are so bad at getting off the field on those third and longs, is because they don't make an opposing quarterback really think or worry or have to do it. And you look at the good teams around the leagues, teams like Miami Dolphins defense, who will kind of do this kind of cover zero show and bring everyone up to the line and kind of mix things up and give the quarterback something to think about. The Jets just aren't quite there yet in terms of how they're setting up, and you'd love to see it.
Maybe it's because they're young, right? Maybe because the team are young, and Ulbrich and Salah want to keep the defense as simple as possible, so they don't allow for mental mistakes and blown plays. Remember, eliminate the explosives, right? And they don't want to allow. So maybe they're hyper focused on eliminating explosives, and they allow the constant mediocre plays that get the chains moving constantly, which then leads to, instead of allowing a touchdown on 5 plays of a drive, and the offense comes back on after a few minutes on the sideline, you suddenly now are on the field for 9 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes a time, and then pair that with either side of half time, and that's why your offense is on the sideline for nearly an hour before they come on between the Griffin touchdown and that first down throw to Coleman on that kind of 3-and-out series. It's actually counterintuitive, the eliminate explosives things, because you're dragging the clock out of the way of the team, and you're freezing your offense. So I don't know. I think it only works if you get off on third down, and if he's not mixing it up and we're getting B on third down, that's a deadly combo for any success. Yeah. So they got to rethink this, how it works, and I think it's time for them to put a little bit more wrinkles in and say, listen, if we're going to have some blown coverages, we'll take that because the offense is doing enough that we could get back in it, and maybe we'll actually make a successful play from that. It won't be a blown coverage. It'll be a successful disguised play, and we'll get off on third down. I think they have to be a bit more aggressive when it comes to throwing a little bit more at these younger players now that they're in the second half of their first year. I think they can take it on, and I would like to see that in the next couple of weeks.
Totally. It's kind of the definition of insanity, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over again and not getting the results.
It was.
And
it was
yesterday it felt like on third down it was just no thing. Right, I've got 2 players I wanted to call out on one position group, and that's kind of my thoughts on defense. The first thing is Bryce Hall had a great bounce back game after a difficult time on Brandon Cooks. He took Devonta Smith out of the game. I think Smith ended up with 15 yards.
Two catches, 15 yards. I told the Eagles guys, they were like on their pod, they're like, yeah, he's going to have 2 touchdowns, he's going to over 120 yards. I was like, all right. And I went with Quez Watkins as a kind of guy who may have more yards, and he had 60. Because I was just like, Bryce Hall. I said, guys, watch out this Bryce Hall guy. I mean, he may not be like your number one guy overall, but he can do a good job on most weeks, especially against a rookie. He could probably do a pretty good job, and he did. He really did.
He was excellent. On the flip side of it, Nathan Shepherd is awful.
I know.
He is so bad, and he should not see the field again this season. You should get Jonathan Marshall those snaps, see what you have on the defensive line. Nathan Shepherd should not be back on this team next season. He is a penalty machine. He is a hole machine. He can't fill gaps. He can't eat up blocks. He doesn't do anything for this team. He was a bad McCagnon pick, taking an older defensive lineman in the 3rd round, wasn't it? And it just has not panned out. So get Nathan Shepherd off the New York Jets.
He was the first pick after Donald, I think.
He was, which kind of summed up Mike McCagnon, wasn't
that is
it?
McCagnon, right? You took a rookie QB, and then you take in the 3rd round, you go with an older defensive lineman, where we already have a ton of defensive linemen. It's like, but that's just like shocking. It's probably one of the most underratedly shocking moves that McCagnon ever made, you know? But yeah, anyway, but we're past that, hopefully. You know, like I said, now, it's time to move on from Shepherd as well. We've got enough talent there that we can build on. I think, obviously, they're not a complete unit. I think they struggle. The defensive line do struggle against better offensive lines, and that's not great. I mean, Minshew was standing there with a lot of time, and you're like, you know the throw's coming. You know someone's going to get open because he's just standing there with so much time. And you're like, making it so easy for Minshew to have his way with the Jets yesterday. So, you want to see more from the offensive line, from the defensive line. To be honest, if they're not they're heralded as better. But I think edge presence. I think what you said about Bryce Huff, and obviously we're talking about Carl Lawson, maybe getting some other help in that position in the off season, whether it be free agency draft. That's such a crucial part of this defense. As much as there are the few crucial parts, I think we're missing. You talk about linebacker play, safety play, and edge play. Those are like the 3 real premium cogs of this defense. And we haven't got anything in all 3 positions except for CJ, who had a bad game, but generally he's been okay. But generally, he can't do everything every week. But we're just missing those 3. Are like if you had to list the 3 most important positions in the Salad defense, it would be those 3. And then I think so. You kind of say, they need to work a bit more with what they got. But it's kind of, you understand, it's kind of a bit of. It's nothing to get too scared, too upset about, because you do know that we are missing a lot. So you got to factor that in. But Shepherd, get him out of there, right?
And just on the D-line more broadly, the one thing that I'd really like to see over these last 5 weeks is just an increase in their kind of backside awareness.
Yeah,
they're so busy trying to get 2-3 yards upfield that you need someone just to kind of control it, particularly with the linebacker court being what it is. They just don't seem to really have a awareness of what's around them in terms of their blocks, in terms of their gaps, and you just like to see them be a bit more of a cohesive unit. And it's kind of similar to what we've spoken about before, but filling those gaps and kind of eating them up in a bit more of a containment manner.
I mean, Quinnen and know Foley can do it really well. They've done it in all their years. They've actually done really good defensive. They've stopped the run really well. They actually haven't pass rushed as well as you would want, especially Quinnen. He's obviously done pretty well. He's a great player, but overall, you see that him and Foley can do a really good job at stopping the run. So you've got people who can do the job. Give them that assignment a bit more. I know it goes against the defense, but we just haven't got the. It's like you're saying, work with what you've got. We haven't got the edge rushers to really press. We're going to have to do different things, and against a really run heavy team, who are going to lean on the run even more. They've got 180 odd yards on the running game because they're leaning on that with Minshew. Have a bit more discipline about stopping the run and make it hard. Make Minshew have to throw from a longer down and distance. From simple as that. But they seem to be going full on with this scheme, and it is what it is. But I don't know. It seems to be, like I said, we're doing the same thing where we're kind of screaming at them to make changes to the scheme a little bit to kind of work with what they got, like they did with the 12 personnel tight end thing, and it hasn't happened. So we'll see how it happens. But Yeah, I think there's something to watch about. To sort of watch over the next few weeks here if they will. I mean, next week we've got maybe Alvin Kamara's return for the Saints. I hope not. You can see
I
what's
hope
going to happen
not.
there. You know, he comes back, he puts like 250 on us. You know, and then they may even have their two tackles back as well in Ramchek and Armstead as well. So that would be very Jets for us to face all three of those guys coming back after what the Saints look very poor without them there. But it would be classic for us to face them on 10 days rest and getting those three players back. We'll see how that develops as we head forward into the preview episode, of course. Before we head off, before we'll do a last little segment. We're gonna add a little segment here. Before we do that, special teams. One. Can we get Matt and Amendola back for now, and while we look for the next guy, or can we just bring in maybe a Josh Lambo? So there must be a veteran kicker who's made a field goal, an extra point, right? And the other thing is, Braden Mann experiment's not working very well, and we had Thomas Morstead in doing pretty well, and I understand they want to give it to the young draft pick who's got the potential, but it's not going well on both fronts, is it?
No, I mean the kicking situation is I don't even know where to begin. It's woeful. Horrific. How did he win the kicking battle?
To be honest,
this week in
when
training,
he came on the field, I knew he was going to miss the extra point. I just knew it. I just it's very Jets that this kicker. I thought he has a very, I don't know. I don't mean to say anything, but Alex Kessman sounds like a guy who would just be a guy who will miss kicks. Like he looks like a fall guy kind of guy, like the guy who will miss a kick from like 20 yards out to win the game, and you end up losing it. I don't know. So then you see that there was, I don't know, his makeup. It just didn't look. There was no confidence in him, and I just felt it was going to happen. You knew he missed the first kick. You're like, don't put him out there for a second. They tried to do it. He missed the second, and he was yanked after that. And you're like,
yeah.
So it's
the worst thing is
it's back to the kicking room now, isn't it?
Yeah, he missed the second one in the exact same way he missed the first one. It wasn't even like he over-adjusted or something. He just did the same thing, and it went wrong. And Braden Mann, I think, is. I'd love to know if he's fully healthy, because we all know Braden Mann can punt so much better than this, and at the moment he is a disaster back there. Is he fully healthy? I don't think we'll know, but something doesn't seem right, and it looks like a mistake to have rushed him back when Morstead was punting well. So, question marks there. But on special teams, Braxton Berrios could kick return, and he is. Braxton Berrios is a super solid Jet, and I hope he gets a contract extension to kind of keep him around as that fifth wide receiver, because he is he's a good guy, and he shows up in punt returns, kick returns, and kind of does the job. So keep Braxton Berrios around, find a new kicker, get Braden Mann healthy is the special teams takeaway.
Yeah, I mean Braden Mann had a good punt last week against he did pin one down, and Justin Hardy, being the player he is in that position, should have done better to kind of keep it and pin them down on the one. So there was one good punt there from Mann where he kind of put a bit of touch on it and got it. So we have to see about that. I think he was just trying to put as much power on this one as possible, and he just skied it instead of actually hitting it with a decent arc. So yeah, we need to get him sorted out. But I think the kicking competition is even more pressing. I think we need to. Like I said, there's so many veteran kickers out there who have had decent stints with NFL teams. You can't tell me that one of those guys can't come in and do a decent job for the last few games and kind of maybe at least not they don't have to make 55-yard plus kicks, but can we just hit an extra point, please? For goodness sake.
We have low bars when it comes to the kicking position. You do not have to be great, but just make an extra point consistently.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all three positions, 1 plus. And then the other 2 double minus on those ones. But before we're going to introduce a new segment on the recap shows as we come off the weekend of action for the Jets, and we see where the weaknesses are that lie within this team. There are plenty of them, and we look at some of the college football that's been happening, especially in this weekend was very busy with some big games. We're going to open up a new segment where we basically look at some position group that could be addressed with those first 4. First 2 round picks. So we've got obviously 2 in the first, 2 in the second, and we'll just highlight a few players who one that could be in those first 2 picks, and one that could be in those second 2 picks. So you know where the value could be and filling those holes if you've got your eye on different position groups. So for this week, we'll do the linebacking call, because that's obviously a big position of need, as you can tell by this week's game. So Matt, who's the profile for the first round player that you want to bring in?
So I think talking about linebackers, you've got to identify who's going to suit the Jets. And there's two guys I think who would be great additions to the Jets in this top round, and it's Nakobe Dean out of Georgia and Devin Lloyd out of Utah. And for this segment, I'm going to focus on Nakobe Dean because I have to be honest, he's probably my biggest draft crush at the moment. As a prospect, he is a hard hitter. He is a guy who can do everything you want out of a linebacker. He's one of these guys. He reminds me a bit of a Devin White almost in terms of the way that he diagnoses, triggers, and then pursues the football, which runs hot. He's a high-level athlete. He's kind of got the ability to get down, run downhill, but can match that with sideline-to-sideline coverage, which is kind of everything that you really want to see. He's a top level athlete. I think he's kind of going to test extremely well. The one downside and the one worry about him is his size. He's only coming in about 6 foot, so he's perhaps a little bit undersized. But when you watch him on the field, he plays big, he plays hard, he plays tough. I think he's kind of got that ability to close down on the ball and kind of fill gaps, fill holes, coverage. He is everything that you want to see in a kind of Jets Robert Saleh linebacker, and hopefully he could be a New York Jet. I think he will end up going in the top 10, which is kind of where our positions are. I'm sure at the moment, given the talk, a lot of people would be saying use these picks on a cornerback or an edge. But I think the edges will probably go 1 and 2, and I don't really think there's a cornerback worth taking in the top 10 at the moment. So, as it stands, I think Nakobe Dean would be the guy to target in those top 10s to really help and elevate this defense.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts is that we'll probably end up, the Jets pick will probably end up with in the kind of the later top 10, the 6 to 10 range. And I think looking at the Seahawks with Russell Wilson, looking like he's maybe coming back a little bit against the San Francisco 49ers. They probably may have a pick in the kind of low teens. So that's what I'm thinking the two ranges are generally. Well, we never know where the next 5 weeks are going to go, but yeah, so that's the kind of top 10 pick. That you could go in that direction. If you were to say punt the position and go elsewhere with those 2 first round picks and head into those 2 second round picks that we've got, who's a player that we could target in the second round that would also maybe do a job?
Well, I'm going to have to stick within the SEC championship game for the top of the second round guy and kind of flip to the other team and go Alabama and talk about Henry To'oTo'o, who is came from the University of Tennessee over to Alabama, and he has elevated his game significantly. He's kind of in a similar mold to what CJ Mosley was at Alabama. He's kind of the emotional, spiritual leader of that defense in terms of how he plays. And you're talking about someone who always seems to end up around the ball. He doesn't seem to miss a play, doesn't seem to take a play off. He kind of gets there quick, gets there hard, and is ready to go. And I think that motor is what's most impressive about Henry. He can kind of get sideline to sideline, downhill fast, and really close the distance. And he plays with a lot of intelligence and a lot of instinctual awareness in terms of being in the right position. And he's kind of got those what you want to see can kind of be moulded into a really top tier player. I think he'll end up being a top 50 player in this class. I think about the top of the second round is where we could see him go in.
Right.
And I think he's just got that kind of unique ability to make himself a real asset on a defense early, kind of in a similar way to Darius Leonard, taken in the top of the second round by the Indianapolis Colts. And he just kind of had that ability to find the ball, see the ball, tackle the ball, and get there fast. And that's kind of what you want to see out of the Jets, because at the moment they just feel they're a little bit too slow in their linebacker core in getting to the ball. So two really top linebacker players there, both who, if you go back and watch the SEC Championship game from this weekend, you'll be able to check them out. But I think one for the top 10, one for the top of the second round, fix the linebacker position has to be a priority in this upcoming off season. And these are two guys who I think would do it nicely.
Yeah, I think if you can't go back and watch the game, if there's no way to kind of repeat the game, you can always look forward to the championship, the playoff games that they're going to be in. Both teams are the Georgia and Alabama are going to be in the playoffs, so you can check them out against some decent opponents as well, and see how they match up against them. So, yeah, two good players, two good prospects. Obviously, we'll know more about them. We'll talk about them more as we lead to the draft. But we thought we'd just drop in some of these ones as we're heading towards the end of the season. We are really being able to identify the weaknesses that lie within our team, and I think it's good to start highlighting a little bit of highlighting the amount of assets that we've got and how much we can turn this team and plug some decent holes. To do some decent work in plugging those holes next year. Obviously, we've got a lot of cap space as well, but we just don't know about the who's going to become a free agent with who might be re-signed or that sort of stuff. But you can tell the free agents, the draft picks that might come through. So we thought we'd just highlight a few of those ones so we can look a little bit forwards as well. We stay within the present. I think that's necessary with this defensive display to see where we could kind of improve it, because I think it was a bit bleak after last night. So, guys, thanks for joining us on this one. Matt, is there anything you want to say to listeners before we head off?
No, just keep positive. Let's see how we go.
Yeah.
Ride the Jets roller coaster all the way to the end of the season.
No, absolutely. So if you on social media, you follow us on Jets UK Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Get the discussion there. And if you want to answer any questions, we're always happy to bring any questions onto the pod. Subscribe, like to our YouTube channel that we have the podcast up in video form if you want to have it like that. Obviously David's work with the Jet Way, he continues to pump out good content as well. We look forward to the next week. We've got the Saints coming up. We'll be previewing it later in the week. I will be speaking with a guy from Dome Patrol UK, which is a kind of UK based Saints podcast, and we'll be previewing the game later in the week. So guys, have a great week and we'll catch you next time.